Good evening, everyone. My name is Marie Dorini. I'm the Associate Director of the Columbia Institute for Ideas and Imagination at Reed Hall. And we're very excited to be organizing this evening with Columbia Global Centers Paris for Pride Month. We wish we could be doing it at Reed Hall, and we very much hope that very soon we will be greeting all of you again in our wonderful place where Tash spent a year as a fellow at the Institute for Ideas and Imagination in 2018 and 2019. And so I'm particularly happy and honored that he's agreed to do this event because as we say at the Institute, once a fellow, forever a fellow, and Tash is very much the embodiment of that and of how these wonderful connections keep going, and this conversation with Abdellah is just another manifestation of that and all the synergies that we find with Columbia Global Centers. So thank you both so much for being here tonight. I'll give a brief introduction of both of you, and then I'll hand it over to you for a conversation, and then Tash and Abdellah will take questions towards the end, and we should be wrapping up at 8 o'clock. So Tash is the author of 4 critically acclaimed novels, The Harmony Silk Factory, Maps of the Invisible World, and 5-Star Billionaire. And more recently, We the Survivors, that was just been published in French. He also has this wonderful memoir of his childhood and his family in Malaysia called The Face, Strangers on a Pier, that he's just worked and augmented on, and that will be published again by Fourth Estate in the UK in September under the title Strangers on a Pier. And that's a very exciting publication we're looking forward to. He's been the recipient of numerous awards, the Whitbread Prize, the Commonwealth Prize, O. Henry Award, and he's been twice longlisted for the Man Booker Prize. Tash's novel have been translated into 23 languages. He's a regular contributor to the New York Times, the Guardian, the LRB, the New York Review of Books, the New Yorker, the Magazine Littéraire, A Public Space, and Landmark Granta 100, amongst many others. And it's a real pleasure to have you with us, Tash, tonight in conversation with Abdellah Taïa, who's wearing pink tonight and in honor of Pride Month. He was born in Morocco in 1973. He's the first Arab writer filmmaker to publicly declare he's gay, and he's the author of 9 novels written in French, including Salvation Army and Arab Melancholia, both translated into English by Semiotext, and Infidels in 2012, which was published by 7 Stories Press. His novel Le Jour du Roi was awarded the Prix de Flore in 2010, and Salvation Army, which is adapted from his novel, is his first movie as a director and was selected in numerous festivals, including the Venice Film Festival in 2013, and has won many international prizes. And his novel, A Country for Dying, which came out originally in French in 2015, has been translated into English by 7 Stories Press in 2020 and won the very prestigious PEN America Translation Award. It's a great honor to have you both, and now I'll leave you to your conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie. Abdellah, it's such a great, it's a great pleasure and a great honor. I have so many questions to ask you. I very selfishly, I guess, sort of ask you the first question. When I first discovered your work, what really struck me was how questions of sexual identity, gender identity, but really sexual identity was so tied into the idea of moving from one country to another, one geographical space to another, more specifically from Morocco to the West. And it really sort of resonated with me because that was something I had experienced so much. And in the brief time that we've known each other, we've talked about a lot of this and how the duality of our lives, the non-Western part of our lives and the Western part of our lives sit and kind of sometimes not so happily, sometimes kind of they cohabit peacefully, but often there's a lot of tension. Can you talk to us about how you feel about that. Maybe, you know, just talk to us about how you first came to leave Morocco.
Well, bonsoir to all of you, and bonsoir to you, Tash. I'm more than happy to be in conversation with you. I'm more than honored, and we have to give here a big hello to our friend Edouard Louis. He is the one who talked to you about me, and he's the one who talked to me about you. So he's the link between you and me. It's really.
He told us that he's here in the room with us.
Yeah,
So
I think somewhere here with us. He's watching us, I think.
He's watching always somewhere around. And in fact, he was the one who, I think I told you, we were in New York at some years ago now together, and he said, I have this friend called Abdellah, you really, really must read his book. And we went to every bookshop, and the only volume we could find back then was Salvation Army. It was in English, and I read that, and I just devoured it, and I was thrilled with it. And that was the book that first sort of, you know, alerted me to, you know, the richness of your story and how you told it with so much nuance.
Well, thank you very, very much, Tash. And I just want to answer your first question, because it is weird that, yes, you and me, we are here in the West now, and I've been living here more than 22 years now. But when I decided to leave Morocco, it was not a decision that I took when I was 20 or 25. It's something that I decided when I was 12. And it's not because I hated the country, Morocco itself, or I hated the Moroccan people or the family. Yes, I had, like so many queer people, lots of problems with the family, the neighborhood, etc., etc. But the link with these people and the link with the earth there and the sky there was something that was in me and is still in me. I didn't know about at that time about the idea of being gay as an identity, of even being queer as something, as a category being invented, defined, theories written about so many things in the West. But naturally, I think, because I am gay naturally, whether some people like it or not, we are queer naturally, whether some people like it or not. There is like, we impose our queerness, our gay thing to the world, to the people around us. Yes, we didn't have the political support at that time from the Moroccan government, the rich people to help someone like me or someone like lesbians around me. But I have to admit that coming here in the West didn't change my feeling about being gay or queer, because I don't know, the idea of facing struggles as a human being, although they can be extremely dangerous and you can even die while facing these struggles, it's the fact that you are facing them that makes you somehow, I'm not going to say interesting, but that gives you a taste, and it gives you a meaning to the thing you are going to do later, including the West. Because when I arrived here, and I guess it's the same for you, Tash, it's, yes, the West is the land of freedom, they call it, but it is extremely difficult to find a place, even when you are gay or queer, especially if you are Asian or Arab, if you look Asian like you, and I look Arab like me. So the struggles, the very, very hard struggles as a human being and as a queer gay person in Morocco continued in the West. That's something that I want us to talk about. What do you think?
Absolutely. It's how to survive in what is essentially a hostile climate, in a world that actually doesn't naturally accord you any favors, that is structured to favor other people, and not you. And I think, you know, you're right in saying, you know, when you were 12, or maybe even earlier, you don't have the vocabulary, but you have the sentiment, you have this feeling, you have an impulsion. And also the way you talk about movement to the West is very interesting, because if you follow the normal, the conventional narrative of these kinds of trajectories, the movement to the West is supposed to be one of liberation. You're there in your sort of terrible sort of third world country, and you're suffering under all kinds of sort of brutal regimes, and you move to the West in order to find freedom. But in fact, it's not that simple. It's much more complicated and much more nuanced from that than that. And if I go back to a lot of your early work, or at least the work that I first discovered you through, which is Salvation Army. And everyone out there who hasn't read this yet, I think you really must. And I'm going to sort of advertise this book. It's really kind of wonderful. You describe kind of, in a very gentle way, it's not explanatory at all, how this transition of the relationship with your home country and with the West takes place. And at no point are you judgmental. So all these notions of love and hate, love and struggle, they're really tied up with each other. So of course we realize that with you, like me, we grow up in family structures which are very conventional. They are geared towards producing a certain result. They're geared towards producing a certain mentality, a certain progression. And the moment you realize that you're not the same, you begin to think about how you can escape the structure, or how you can change the structure. But it doesn't change the love that you have for that structure, even though that love is sometimes bound up with a lot of resentment and a lot of struggle. How do you free yourself from that? And you're right, that's something you take to the new country. I mean, for me, I have to say that sexuality and sexual identity was very much tied up, is something that is very much tied up with the state of being an immigrant. The two things go hand in hand for me, because even, and I'm not sure sort of what the position is exactly in Morocco, but in Malaysia, it's more complicated, and perhaps not the time to go into the complexities of Malaysian society. But because I'm an ethnic minority, before I even knew about queer identity, I knew about immigrant identity. I knew about the insults that were handed out to people of my ethnicity, people who were minorities, who handed out to my parents and my grandparents. I could see the kind of the insults they were suffering. So I knew, even before I knew anything about being queer, I knew about being excluded. I knew about operating on the margins in a country that actually for the first few years, I had absolutely no idea of being different. I just thought I was exactly the same as every single other person. And that the land, you mentioned earlier, the attachment to the land, to the sky. In Malay, we describe the country as Tanah Air, which is literally the very soil and the water and everything around it. I have this, like you, a very deep attachment to the physical attributes of the country, and I really felt that they belonged to me as much as they belonged to everyone else. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that actually, no matter how I felt, the rest of society didn't deem this to be true. And if the government certainly didn't deem it to be true. And so ideas of resentment start to sort of entwine themselves with ideas of love. And so the two are never separate. For me, it never involved a kind of a rejection. I could never bring myself to reject anything or anyone, and certainly I still can't. After years of primarily living abroad, I can't still bring myself to reject Malaysia in any way, and that was something I felt I could identify in your work.
Well, when you face, for instance, when you go with your mother or with your father and you see them being humiliated days after days, years after years, and you see them inventing lies just in order to stop the powerful people, the policemen or the people in the offices, to break them down. They are already broke, they are already nothing, but you see them rehearsing in front of you the lies that they are going to apply on the society, just to stay a little bit in dignity. But even that dignity, they didn't give them the opportunity to have it, because me personally, I grew up in my childhood and even my adolescence, even in my years in the university, with dealing with my mother, how we are going to find money for I don't know, for me to take the bus in order to go to the university. And if your shoes are not well enough and people are laughing at you because you don't have the right shoes, because you are going to Rabat and it's the capital, and the people, they look at you in a certain way because they see you are poor and you have shoes with holes, and you go to Rabat with holes because there is something else. So what I want here to emphasize is the being gay cannot be it cannot be have the same taste without bringing all these other people struggling with me, next to me. So yes, of course, for people like you and me, they couldn't save us from the insults, from the spitting, from the rapes in my case. But at the same time, although I hated them, my parents and my sisters and so many people in the neighborhood, I hated them and I wanted them to die. But later on, when I grew up and I understood what is really going on in the society, I understood that they were much, much more down than me, because me, at least, I don't know, I had this intelligence to construct something with this thing called gay homosexuality, meaning I felt like they want to rape me, they want to do this to me. Well, I'm going to be much more intelligent than them. I'm going to be a Shakespearean actor. And actually I was the greatest actor in my neighborhood, because that's the technique, the strategies I saw my parents developing every day. And me today, 47 years old man writer, I will never, and I think this is very important to say here in the West, because from someone like me, and I guess maybe from someone like you too, especially an Arab like me, Muslim, there is a certain discourse expected. There is a certain way that I have to put in myself in order to be accepted and celebrated as the gay Arab, the free gay Arab, meaning that my parents and the poor people in Morocco, they are only savages who don't understand what does it mean freedom and what does it mean emancipation, which is totally false, of course. These people, although I hated them at certain times, I wanted them to really to die, but they face much more struggles, dangerous. It's like going to war for certain days, for every day for them. So compared to someone who is living here in the West, I think there is no comparison. They live much more struggle. I don't want, what I'm trying here to say, I don't want us, and I guess you will agree with me, to put this idea that to be gay and free means that you don't understand these other people. That I think it's very important.
No, absolutely, because I think, it's a certain time, it's part of the same struggle. I always saw that as being, part of this, absolutely part of the same struggle. When I saw how, my parents had to, to struggle, my family, my extended family, who are much less fortunate than even my parents, had to go through some really, really rough times, really only because they didn't belong to the dominant group. I thought this is how life is. This is how I understood that was the kind of struggle that any kind of excluded people are going to have to struggle. And I needed to devise more sophisticated and even more powerful sort of techniques to to arm that struggle. And in my case, it was books. It was, developing an imagination that that would lead me to different circumstances so that I could somehow reshape the circumstances of my youth. And all that I see as sort of, bound up in one. And I think you're right. It's absolutely not, I don't see a rejection of my origins, my family, my country, as being necessary to lead the life I am now. And I really do find it sort of, I do find it quite insulting sometimes when people, particularly sort of a certain kind of Western thought, enforces on you the necessity to do that in order to stake your place in Western society, in Western intellectual society. And that somehow, first, if you think about the hierarchy of nations and the hierarchy of cultures, Western societies insist on they create a certain hierarchy based on financial wealth, based on economic wealth, and then it's based on cultural sophistication. It's based on certain ideas of freedom. But because those ideas of freedom can't be applied equally to my family, for example, who don't enjoy freedom in the same way, you can't have that. You can't have notions of freedom in the same way. They've had to fight so much more than so many other people in different countries. And so for me, I can't, queer identity is not separate from, being an immigrant. It's not separate from being Chinese. It's the same.
And do you remember the first time you decided that one day you are going to leave? Like the moment?
There was never one moment for me. What I wanted to do was to go to somewhere else where the pressures and the structure around me would be more favorable to a kind of reinvention. Would be more favorable to my struggle. That it would be another kind of way that I could achieve a certain sort of equilibrium, achieve a certain sort of equality, not just for me, but all the people I represent, all the people, my parents, my family. And those were not things that I felt at that point in time I could achieve back in Malaysia. If I'm really honest, I think actually that moment came very, 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 very late. So in my late teens, so comparatively late, so, when you compare it with you, because for the longest time I just wanted to be like everyone else. I really, really just thought I was like everyone else. I didn't feel I had any other identity that wasn't the same as the rest of heteronormative Malaysian society. I really just wanted to fit in. But it does get to a point where you think, actually, you can try as much as you want, but this society is not structured to make it easy for you. So if you want to restructure yourself, you have to sort of go somewhere else where you can be totally kind of invisible, and actually you can allow all the various parts of yourself to sort of fracture and recompose in a way that is totally different, which is stronger, which is more resilient, which is more attuned to struggle, which is more attuned to combat, as it were. I mean, it's I use the word combat not lightly, because you are having to fight a lot of these prejudices. You are having to fight a lot of political structures, cultural structures. It is, it was in my case, and it is still in many occasions, a combat.
It is. And when you arrived here in the West, it was in London, right?
Yeah.
So did you feel or did you enjoy maybe in the beginning what we call la liberté occidentale, the Western freedom? And what does that mean?
I didn't experience it as something distinct. All I felt was a difference that would allow me to be anonymous and to allow me to sort of to recompose myself, to reinvent myself. that's what I want. That's what I wanted. And that I felt very powerfully. I didn't feel that as a liberation. I didn't feel it particularly, people always, when you don't live in a certain country and you see it from the outside, and I nowadays I have a tendency to do this. You always see the official structures. So you'll see, like, and people will read in Malaysia that there is officially no freedom of speech, and there is officially a country that deems homosexuality to be illegal. But actually, when you're in that country, you'll see that actually Malaysians are very argumentative. They will say everything, and you see that there are LGBTQ plus people living, finding a way to live. And so for me, that it wasn't so much a question of liberty. It was a question of liberty insofar as being able to say what you want to say, or being able to write what you want to write. But it was a kind of an anonymity, a liberty that comes from anonymity, comes from being far from where you've grown up, and far from the things that make you who you are. For you to realize that actually, do those things make me what I am? And it's a start of a long process of questioning to understand what the things are that make you who you are. That's certainly true in my case. And I felt I had to make that journey in order to sort of understand that actually there are lots of parts of me that are so formed by are so shaped by my upbringing, so shaped by my country, so shaped by my culture, and those things would never change. But other parts, are things that I've learned. I've learned certain habits, and I've acquired certain habits. We all do that. We just repeat things that are said to us. We repeat things that people around us say, and those are things I was more able to sort of dispense with when I came to Britain. I remember when we first met in Paris, and I don't know Paris so well, and I got lost in the metro, and I took the train in the wrong direction. I was very, very late, and I met it's like sort of half an hour late, which in Western terms is terrible. And I said to you, I'm really so sorry, because it's this cliche that a stereotype that it's kind of a running joke amongst Malaysians that we're always late. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm so Malaysian, I'm so sorry to be late. And you said, don't worry, I'm an Arab, I don't care. And there was this wonderful meeting of two kind of outsiders in a space which, we've kind of recreated for each other.
Yes. Well, listening to you talking about your own experience makes me realize that maybe I have reached that level of freedom here in the West. And I'm going to tell you why. Because of this construction of lies, of fictions of us that we had to do in Morocco with my family in order just to stay safe and to have something to eat during many, many years. And when I was in the university in Rabat, where I studied French literature, and there is Zola, there is Balzac, and you see all these typical literary French characters. They go to Paris and they invade Paris. And I felt when I arrived in Paris in 1998, it was like, this is the place where I'm going to be ruthless.
You're going to be like a Bellamy or
the gay Bellamy. And I think somehow I was a gay Bellamy, meaning somehow there is all this political structures here in France that can stop someone like you, like me, Arab or Muslim or African or Black here. But yet the souvenir of, things you read in Balzac books somehow gives the authorization. So whatever they would say, these people representing the power in France and the social classes in Paris, specifically Paris, I remember clearly that I was not afraid of Paris, and I was not afraid of the neighborhood with the publishing houses are in Paris. And I remember I used to go to walk there, and I kept thinking, what fictions, like how to seduce them, what strategies I should I should have. In Morocco, I was totally aware of that my strategies will not work because the social classes are much, much more ruthless, like that, much more dangerous. You look poor, you don't exist. You look rich, you do.
Because you and I don't come from that kind of class of people, you know, the small class of people for whom things are possible. That you can just walk into any space and obtain what you want. So, you know, we have to sort of find that somewhere else.
Exactly, and I think this is maybe that's what defines to be gay. This idea that maybe you had miserable years with people not understanding you, and rapes, in my case, like rapes during many years of the neighborhood, and people knew and they did nothing, etc. But still, this little thing in you, gay thing, makes you develop a certain way of survival and a certain way of intelligence. And that intelligence, maybe you could associate it immediately of seduction, how to seduce people. How, meaning, it's like when you want people not to harm you, you just invade them with sweet words, with prayers. That's what the strategy actually of my mother. And thank God, my mother now is dead, but her strategies were good, and I'm using them. I used them in Paris, and I used them when I arrived in order, because I don't think people do realize how much it is hard just to have papers here in the West. Because yes, you are gay and you want to be free in the West, etc., etc. But the reality of it, and it is very harsh, very hard. You are being asked to prove almost every day or every year something that you are incapable of proving. So you have to invent another fiction. You have to find people who will help you. You have to find someone who gave you this paper and that paper. And me, these little things that maybe this part of the story of us that maybe some people are not interested in, these details, these fights, these days and nights of me thinking, how am I going to seduce that guy? And what I am going to tell him, and how in order to get that, because otherwise they are going to take me away from France. And I want to be in France because I had a plan. Somehow, all these things are being associated to the experience of being gay in the West, meaning that we know, because we lived it, that somehow this thing called the freedom, emancipation, unfortunately, can be only a slogan, something you hear like a commercials on TV, but the reality, what you do, I don't know, like even the bad persona of you that you have to bring just in order to survive. I am extremely interested in these things of how the people make it.
Yeah, no, the mechanics of survival, the details of survival are very interesting. I mean, I agree, because, you know, when you talk about seduction, is that what you're talking about is not necessarily carnal seduction, which you know obviously is one thing. You're actually talking about like literally seduction on every single minute level.
Yes.
About how to say hello to someone when you go into a shop, how to sort of make them, you know, make them understand that you're not a threat, how to make them understand that that you know, they shouldn't call security, how to make them understand that you're not trying to break into your into their house or break into their car.
And yet, while doing all these things, you not to be depressed because you are facing all these rejections coming out from it, like these micro rejections, like you see them, like you are experiencing them, and you know that there are not that many people that you will listen to you when you say all these detailed experiences of you trying to make it in Paris or in London. And I think the mechanism and the strength you find in yourself, or you invent in yourself, actually, it's about invention, not even, because I don't think I am that strong, or you are teeny tiny. When I met you, you are teeny tiny. I am
so for the avoidance of doubt, I'm 5'8", so if I 1 meter,
well, you are very
1.72 meters, but okay, not tall. That's
now let's say you are very frail, like and you like when we see you, we don't imagine the strength someone in the street. And I think it was the same for me when I arrived here. But yet you have to invent that strength and to face, while trying to prove that you are.
People always imagine that people like you and me are going to be very kind of frail, but in fact, you know, our trajectories, our parcours, are involve, you know, a lot of survival mechanisms which, you know, we've had to devise, and it is something that, you know, you once said to me that you now don't even have to think about it. Your body just responds to the situation. Your mouth responds to the situation. Your words respond to the situation, and that's absolutely true. You know, you go into a shop and you want to buy something, or you want to look at something, and you know someone is the shopkeeper is hostile to you. You're already adapting the way you talk. You're already adapting, you know, in order to get what you want, in order to sort of be served, in order to, you know, get a table in the restaurant, in order to get this or that or the other. And, you know, that's before you even come to, you know, having papers, having anything, having a publishing contract, you know, having absolutely. I mean, and doing book reading.
You have to be that. I'm not going to be nice person, and for me, it's a question of seduction. Because what do I have? I have nothing. I don't come from a bourgeois family. I don't look like a white French bourgeois person. The only thing I had is to show that I am an interesting person, and I can talk to you about François Truffaut. And if you want, we can even talk about Wim Wenders if you want. And the fact, and what is really
we can also talk about Nicki Minaj, which we will have to do later.
Have to talk about Nicki Minaj. Look, I mean, you see clearly that when you pronounce this name, Wim Wenders, when you pronounce the name of, I don't know, Jean-Luc Godard or something, you see clearly in the eyes of the people, he must be a good Arab. This Arab or this person is not like the others. And yet,
talk to me. That is a good point now to talk about something that we've talked about, which we've sort of become very frustrated about, which is this idea of authenticity. So what is a good Arab? You know, more than what is a good Arab? What is a real Arab? So
or what is a good Asian? It's the same.
But that's what people say. You know, that there's supposed to be somehow. So if you talk about in the literary space, you know, a good Asian, a real Asian. Not, and forget the good Asian, a real authentic Asian. So this idea of authenticity, how to be authentically Asian, how to be authentically Arab, how to be authentically gay, is something that that really is only applied in one sense. No one says, you know, how are you, you know, authentically British? No one says how are you authentically German, because the standard is assumed to be white middle class. And kind of averagely educated. Whereas if you're to be authentically Asian, you have to adhere to a certain kind of a hymn sheet, a certain kind of parole. You have to adhere to a certain kind of, you have to write about a certain thing. You have to write about things that are, you know, are very earnest. You have to sort of reject the idea of the complexity and the multiplicity of life in Asia, and to reduce it to one kind of thing, which is basically, you know, people are poor and suffering, not that they're resilient and also poor, but resilient, and that the idea of liberation is sort of attached to, you know, Western bourgeoisie. That is, I think, in the literary space, what being Asian means. You have to talk a lot about rituals, and you have to talk a lot about customs. And, you know, in the introduction, Marie Dorigny mentioned the essay I wrote, which is sort of a celebration, a sort of homage to my family, my parents, my grandparents. And one of the things I talk about in the book is how my grandmother taught me the tools of survival, how to sort of, you know, it's the absorption of the insults and using the insults to make something stronger.
Yes.
And when I think back to all the tools she gave me with, you know, all the things that I could see her absorbing and and resisting. That's what she gave me. She gave me the tools to survive in a hostile place. So now, to be authentically Asian, what I feel I'm required to do is to write about all the kind of the little customs, the traditions that she taught me, how to pray, how to worship my ancestors, how to make little cakes during the festivals, how to clean the house in a certain way, in a certain sort of ceremonial way, how to dress, or things that come from, I don't know, Chinese myths or legends. Except she taught me none of that. My parents taught me none of that because, you know what, they were too busy surviving. They were too busy fighting. They were too busy earning money. They were too busy just trying to live. And so actually, that's what I learned from them. I learned to be resilient, and that's what I find, you know, is my model of authenticity. And so I was just interested to know what you felt about yours.
Well, listening to you speaking Tash, the word I have in my mind is this, le mot universel, the universal. I don't know. Sometimes this word seems just like an insult. Like it's asked when you see they want you to ask to write something that is universal, meaning that you have to erase things from your experience and the experience of the world, of the people around you, and to shape it in a certain way, in a certain narrative, and in being completely aware of the public that is going to read you. So you have like to kind of kill the essence, the chaotic essence of it actually, and to make it in a certain order. And like this, it will speak to I don't know, to someone in Sweden or Germany. So,
but I think more than that, though, that it will then make sense to that person. It automatically identify to that person in Sweden or Germany that you are Asian with a capital A, or Moroccan with Arab with a capital A. In fact, there's so many, like 1,000 different ways, a billion different ways of being Asian. You know, it's such a vast thing. But what you're expected to do is to sort of give easy signals, and that I find is, you know, it's so reductive. It's so reductive of the way we live.
And when you think of it, there is something colonial happening there. We are being asked to produce things, literature or writing or films, according to aesthetic or ideas being developed in the West many years ago, maybe 2 centuries ago. And here we are today, and we are asked to be as they see us, according to idea. That's what we call Orientalism, we call colonialism. So thank God, now in this time, there are people like you and me who can, and so many other people on the planet who can criticize this permanence of colonialism ideas and Orientalist ideas. But what we were speaking about earlier, this idea of macro resistance, and actually I think that is a way of criticizing this permanence of the colonialism and the Orientalism. The word authentic, because you were saying that word, actually it means nothing.
No, it's nonsense. I have no idea what authenticity means.
It's like when you hear someone saying, "Oh, he's so well behaved." What does it mean? It means he just fulfills every category in your mind, and he's just perfect. Check, 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 check. So he's so
well brought up. Well brought up is the other thing.
Yes, in England.
Well, the French are also quite obsessed. Il est très bien élevé. I mean, they say that all the time. But it's true that someone, you know, the last novel that I published, called We the Survivors, it's full of the kind of the detail, this kind of little detail. And it's really, you know, I just looked at the various members of my family, you know, who are always struggling sort of to find sort of small bits of work. And actually this is, you know, represent vast numbers of Malaysians. And I'd absorbed this, you know, I know how they live. You know, this is how people live. This is their everyday life. And the book is full of this, the minute detail of how they go to work every day and how they're trying to sort of keep in kind of precarious employment. You know, it's never great jobs that they have, but they're always sort of just hanging on to some kind of livelihood. And when I did interviews for the book's publication in Britain, more than many journalists said to me, it's really, they found it really interesting because it was the first time in a novel they saw so much detail about work, which I found astonishing, because what they're saying is that this novel, I think what they were saying is it's slightly boring because there's so much detail about micro resistance and about micro struggles, and that actually it was also in a way that they weren't kind of expecting. It was a revelation of a deeper way of thinking in the West about the novel today, which is that no one actually works in Western novels because they're so bourgeois. They're so sort of ensconced in themselves. And I thought that it was really revealing, because what was the everyday life? What constitutes the everyday life of, you know, all the people I live with, to them was just a series of details that were, you know, on the verge of being slightly tedious. But to me, it involves incredible richness, you know, how someone actually hangs on to employment despite, or just how someone survives, you know, in a landscape, in a country that isn't favorable to them, is really fascinating. You know, just the everyday, how you go to work in a place where everyone hates you, no one, you know, no one's being gratuitously nice to you. That in itself, to me, you know, paints a tapestry of something that is really essential to life.
Yes, and I think it's really important to not forget about these details of life, and actually they are not here to show off with, because they are the life. What does it mean, life for you and for these people you grew up with? And it is, I think, very important to remember the sacrifices of the other people just for you to be still alive. So after my parents died, that became a big obsession for me, because both my parents are dead. And suddenly I started to feel ashamed of myself, because, for instance, my mother, when I arrived here in France, I didn't call her during many months, and maybe I didn't go to see her during 5 years or something like that. And 5 years later, she died. And I felt so much ashamed, like I felt like a criminal. How come that this woman who came from the countryside and made it into the city of Saleh, near the capital, and built the house, she never bought kaftans for herself. She managed to give me money to buy tickets for the bus to go to the university. How come I forgot about all this? What does it mean to be free and to feel the urgency to emancipate yourself, myself, but at the same time forgetting about some other people, what the other people did only for you to stay alive? Yes, they didn't understand what does it mean to be gay, what does it mean to, because at that time there was no one speaking about these things. And people today, they forget that in the 70s and the 80s, even here in the West, even on TV, there was no representation. Actually, even today, let's
be honest.
Let's. And yet, when we speak about us, when I am asked to speak about me and people like me coming from Morocco and Arab Muslim world, somehow I'm being asked to say that these people, they were only the barriers for me, which is not true. I feel this idea to be free while forgetting about these people, the struggles again, and what they did literally for you. It's so sad. It is really so sad. And I would even say there is something even criminal there, because my sisters and my mother, yes, they don't have the same ideas as me, but that's not a problem.
They don't have the vocabulary, they don't have the same education, they don't have the same, so much of what we say and actually what we think is learned. We didn't just naturally become writers, we learned how to do it. We didn't, the whole thing about queer identity is that, of course, it's natural, as we said, right at the start, it's something, you feel, but you also have to learn how to talk about it. You also learn how to experience it. You have to learn how to live with it. And, if you grow up in a small town, and this is what I feel about, there is a lot of judgment about certain kinds of people, meted out by the cultural bourgeoisie, which is essentially urban-based and very highly educated, on other people, who live in the countryside, who come from different kinds of backgrounds, and how these people, I suppose, instinctively understand identities that they have had very little experience of, and certainly have had no, vocabulary to deal with. How are they supposed to do it? But it doesn't, absolutely, you're right. What we can't separate, which is what we've been saying all throughout this hour, is that we cannot be called to judge those people, because has a real sacrifice. Real sacrifice has taken place for us to be able to express all these other sides of ourselves.
So yes, we are not going to be the traitors we are expected to be.
It's impossible. I think it's impossible. It's impossible for me in so many different ways. And it comes from that, I think, that very strong attachment you first talked about. About the attachment to the land, to the earth, to the air, to the family. And those things are not, we don't talk about them with nostalgia. The family structure, the national structure, the nation, every way society is structured, these are not things that naturally favor queer people. Not now.
Yeah. Yes. Every day I used to see my mother up in the morning. She used to wake up, because she's coming from the countryside, so she used to wake up very early, and she used to open the windows, and she speaks to the sky. She speaks to the sky. It's not in a shameful way. She speaks to God, to Allah. She invents words, and then she would invite the ones who are already up to come with her, and she puts us around her arms, and we were all speaking to the sky. And I mean, I will never have, I think, the courage to do this. I will feel ridiculous. I would not even have enough energy or talent to do it.
But it's one of the ways that she found to create a moment of closeness, a moment of beauty, and
yes,
in a life that is quite bleak.
Yeah, and that's talent. That's something that we should value. And I would even say that maybe to be a writer and to have the voice as a writer is not only something that is in me alone. It's for sure what I heard my mother saying to the sky, like this audacity. And the audacity to go to the sorcerers and to ask them to put bad, evil, to use evil, because this is what the only solution she found for herself in order to do this or to do that. So this is only, again, just examples of how people resist, and their resistance are as grand, maybe that it's much more grand than ours. That's what I feel.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. Abdellah, I think we have a few minutes for questions. I just hadn't noticed them at the bottom of the screen.
I feel I'm speaking only for 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, I just, as usual, when you and I get together, there's so much to talk about. Okay, first question is, what would you both say today to your younger selves who are navigating how to deal with their homosexuality / queerness?
Ooh la la. Well, try not to hate too much. Whatever. I know this is hard to. Yeah, because there was a time where I hated everything there, and I think I didn't see so many things. And I think in life we have to help each other in a certain way. It's not only about me an individual free. It's mostly about others. It's mostly about the others.
Yeah, I would say, have the I don't know, because in some ways I still feel I'm my younger self, so I still feel I'm just a continuation of my younger self. But I guess I would say, I always recognized it. I always recognized the fact that it wasn't going to be easy, and that the structures around me were going to make it difficult. But I also, at the same time, strangely enough, felt that there was something inherently wonderful about being queer, about just being different.
Yes, there is this thing that comes with being queer, is not to be afraid of the danger. And
absolutely, and that's something I think I wish I had sort of embraced more.
This idea
of joy, because traditionally, if you think of the traditional narrative about queerness, is that it's something, it's a cause of anguish and agony. But actually, a lot of people do instinctively locate a lot of joy. And I know also, for a lot of people, it is a sort of anguish, and people experience it differently, and often it's very mixed. But I would say there is, joy associated with it. And
yeah, but when I say the danger, I don't want the people to understand. I mean this idea to be adventurous, and not to be living
a source of liberation.
Yes, meaning
even at a very early age.
Yeah, meaning even in the daily life, when you go out in the city, and where you walk, where you go, and how you look to the people, and how you can construct things only with eyes with the people, and you can live stories of love and sex and other things, maybe not even sex, and you are not afraid to go there. Yes, you know that the world is not made structured for someone like you, but yet this is something that is really fascinating to me. But yet you want to go. You have that willing to go and go. You don't stay home. This is something that is really fascinating, and I hope with the times we are living today, it will not disappear, because somehow to be human is to be adventurous and not to stay in one place.
Absolutely. I think we're running out of time, but I think we need, there's one more question we can do. There are actually many, and for all you people, all who've asked questions, well, I'm really, really sorry. It's our fault for talking too much. But let's answer one more question. Was writing a therapeutic exercise for you to come to terms with your identity?
For me, no. For me, it's, I don't know how to say this. I don't want to be desperate, but to write, it's not something easy first. It takes a long time to produce one book. And to produce that book, it takes you to go to some dark places in your mind and in your body. And it feels like, to me, it's like, in order to create something that looks like free in the way you write about it, not in the story of an emancipation or freedom, because the people, they make there is a confusion here. People, they take, well, let's be free in this book, but the freedom is in the way you write, and you do things. So no, the writing, the more I write, the deeper I am, the darker things are. But still, I can dance and I can listen to Nicki Minaj, and I love Nicki Minaj, and I dance every day. I guess it's the same for you, maybe, Tash.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's true. I mean, I don't know. It's not a therapy. It's not therapy. I don't think your writing is not a therapeutic exercise for me in any way. Whether it's to do with my identity, in any kind of identity. It's sort of, writing is a vocation for me. It's a sort of a job, and it's I don't absolutely see it. I don't see it as therapy in any way. I'm afraid, I think we're being told to sort of wrap up now. So
thank you both so much. And this is entre Tash et moi, but I hope also between Abdellah and me, when we get to know each other. You forgot to mention Rihanna.
Oh, yes.
Yes, no, Rihanna. Okay. I mean, it's true. We have to have a whole session on Nicki Minaj and Rihanna.
Okay, good. Well, that'll be
big obsession right now is Nicki Minaj.
Okay.
It is
good. Well,
like she's the meaning of life right now for me.
Well, that will be the subject of our next conversation. It did really feel like it lasted for 5 minutes. Thank you both so much. I wish we could take this to a terrace or in our Read Hall garden, but soon we will. So keep yourself posted on our events at the Global Centers and at the Institute and everything that goes on at Read Hall. Thank you both so much. Thank you also to Joël Tebet, Sinead McCausland, Michael Kovalik-Serafin, and James Allen for all their help. And most of all, to Tash and Abdellah and all of you who joined us tonight. Goodbye.